Assignment number 10, covalent naming and formula writing. The naming and formula writing we've been doing up to this point has been for ionic compounds. Let's review that ionic compound naming and formula writing briefly. Looking at our guy over here, our Simpsons guy, I don't know, somebody probably knows his name. I have no idea. But names bond, ionic bond, taken, not shared. Remember that ionic compounds take the electron forming ions, and that's a very strong bond. We did a lab kind of confirming that, proving that situation, that ionic bonds, the ionic compound didn't melt when heated, and the covalent compound did. Ionic compounds give away their electrons to form negative and positive ions, and that attraction between negative and positively charged atoms is what holds this bond together. It's what holds it together. Also remember that an ionic bond is between a metal and a nonmetal, or in this case, something from the green part of the periodic table to something from the yellow part of the table. Remember when we had something like magnesium bonding with fluorine, we would name that magnesium for the first element, and the second element is fluorine, and we change the ending to fluoride. And finally, we could do the crisscross technique where Mg is from group 2, which has a +2 charge, so +2, and F is from the halogens, -1, and we crisscross them. Mg gets the 1, and F gets the 2 for our formula MgF2. Covalent compounds will be named differently, but first, let's do a little bonding Valentine's Day humor. Take a look at that. Soak that up. Isn't that sweet? You complete me. Well done, chlorine. Well done. Covalent bonding. Remember that covalent bonding is sharing electrons. So covalent bonding is sharing. And we've got some puppies covalently sharing their stick that they're playing with. This is a bond between a nonmetal and a nonmetal, or something up in the yellow section, yellow to yellow. Remember, if they're close together, they're in the corner over here, they are covalent. Remember those C's close in the corner, covalent. So how are we going to name and write formulas for, I forgot, we have some covalent humor first. A covalent bond yells at an ionic bond, "Didn't anybody ever teach you to share?" Oh, yes. Try to control yourselves. Simmer down. That is extremely funny. I understand. Now, let's get started. Finally, bonding assignment number 10. Naming and formulas for covalent compounds. You can write chemical formulas for covalent substances, and given a formula, you can write the correct name. That's what we need to be able to do. Go ahead and fill in the covalent compounds prefix table. That's the first part of your notes. Pause the video and move on when you've accomplished that. Covalent naming guidelines. There's a spot to write down these 3 guidelines on your paper. Please pause the video and write down the guidelines, and I will work these problems below after you have done that. Pause the video. Now that you've written down the prefixes, let's go ahead, the prefixes and the guidelines. Let's go ahead and practice naming a few of these. This first one, the first element, so our guidelines, right? The first element as it appears on the periodic table. So carbon is our first element. And write the second element with the IDE ending, just like ionic. So it's carbon oxide. And then it says to add prefixes to represent the subscripts. There is an exception. The prefix mono is not used for the first element. So mono is when you have a 1. And so we've got carbon. We don't write the mono in front of carbon. And then our oxide is 2, and the prefix for oxide is di. So this compound would be named carbon dioxide. Remember, we never write mono on the first element. Let's try this one. carbon oxide. Leave a little space for your prefix. And remember, this is a 1, so we don't write anything for a prefix for carbon. And this is a 1. The second element is mono. And we drop the second O. We don't write MONOOXIDE. When this connection between the prefix and the element is OO or OA, we go ahead and drop the second vowel. Carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide. P2F2. P is for phosphorus. And skip a space for our prefix, and then fluoride. Now in this case, phosphorus does have a prefix subscript that's not 1, so this is diphosphorus, and our fluorine is pentafluoride. Diphosphorus pentafluoride. So you've got some practice problems to do now. I'm going to do the first few with you. Let's try some red. We've already done these two, actually. This is carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. Monox. So carbon, we've got our 2 for di, OXIDE. And now for some new ones. So our first element here is nitrogen. Skip a space in case you need a prefix, oxide. Just like for the ionics. And now we got to put in our prefixes. Do we have a prefix for nitrogen that's not 1? We do. So di, nitrogen, tri, oxide. Number 4 is just nitrogen. Not dinitrogen, it's just nitrogen. So we just have the element nitrogen. There's 2 of them, but we just have the element nitrogen. If it was O2, it would just be oxygen. If it's we did N2. If it was F2 or Cl2, it would be chlorine and fluorine. We don't do the di if it's just one element. And then finally, number 5 is nitrogen. Leave a space for your prefix in case you need it. Nitrogen, nitrogen, PHOSPHIDE. And it's a 1 for nitrogen, so we don't write a prefix. And then we've got a 1 for phosphorus, and the prefix for 1 is mono. So nitrogen monophosphide. So that's how you name them. This is naming. Now, how do we write formulas? If you're given a formula, a name, how do you write a formula? It's just the reverse of that. So we've got carbon. The letter, the symbol for carbon is C, and the symbol for fluoride is F. And then we've got to go back and look. Is there a prefix here? No. Is there a prefix here? Yes. And tetra is 4, so CF4. SiO. Do we have a prefix here? No. Do we have a prefix here? Yes. So a 2. Dinitrogen trisulfide. So NS. Do we have a prefix for N? Yes, it's a 2. Prefix for S? Yes, it's a 3. Phosphorus mononitride. Do we have a prefix for phosphorus? No. Prefix for nitrogen? Yes, it's a 1, so we don't write anything. Finally, hydrogen gas is just H, and it bonds with 2 of them normally, but you don't have to know that. H or H2 is fine for you your freshman year. And that's it. Complete the rest of that paper, practicing those, and bring it to me to have it checked. And as you can see here on the screen, we're done with new stuff. The bonding unit is done. Just bring that paper to me and have it checked when you're done.